Today on Rainbow Country, it's a family affair, especially when it comes to Vancouver Island-based synth rock duo, Waveform Mountain. They're here to talk about their debut album, Processing, as well as members of Waveform Mountain being part of the LGBT community.
Hi everyone, this is Mark Tewksbury, Olympic champion, leader, humanitarian. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
John, hi, how are you?
I am doing reasonably well. Just at the tail end of a cold, but feeling good.
Well, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We're really excited to get to chat with you today.
Anders, hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am good, thank you. Sebastian, bonjour, comment ça va?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Slept in a bit, but I'm here, so that's what matters.
You guys are based where? In BC?
Yes.
Whereabouts? Like Vancouver Island?
Yeah, Vancouver Island. So me and Anders both live in Victoria, and our dad, John, lives in Duncan.
Mm-hmm.
And is Duncan in BC?
So Duncan's also on the island. We're an hour north of Victoria. So Victoria's right on the southern tip of the island, and Duncan is in the Cowichan Valley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say thank you all for being here to have your voices, your stories be heard by the LGBT community and beyond, especially to talk about your family group, your family band, Waveform Mountain. John, you are Anders and Seb's dad. You write the music. You are a recording engineer. Seb, you are a musician. You play bass. You play guitar. Anders, you are a lyricist. You're also the lead vocalist. Anders, you're also part of the LGBT community. You are transgender. I want to start here with Waveform Mountain. I want to start here. John, whose idea was it to start a family group, a family band of sort, to be like, Canada's version of the Partridge Family? Whose idea was it to start this?
It kind of stumbled into existence, and I guess I could say it was Anders' suggestion or idea that got the ball rolling. But I'd been involved in music for some time. My previous career had been in IT, networking and consulting, working for local government. And but I'd always been working on music on the side, and I had a project studio in my previous house. And in 2022, I just finished building my new studio here in the Cowichan Valley. And we'd been through COVID, I'd been through renos. It had been a lot of work, and I was sort of at that point where I was feeling uninspired about music. I'd spent so much time doing work to get the studio ready that I really didn't know where to go. And it was actually Anders' birthday, and we were having a phone call, and I was talking about this, how strange it felt to be done and have this beautiful studio ready to do some recording and not really know where to take things. And Anders suggested, hey, why don't we just challenge each other to write some songs together? We've never done that. And so that was the start of it.
So is this a band? Is it a duo? Like in the some of the press material, I see the word duo, but there's three of you.
I'm not sure who should answer that.
Well,
Anders,
I think
take it away.
I started. Yes, officially, Dad and I started as a duo. Seb joined in on our second song just for fun, because we had this challenge to write 12 songs in a year. And then I think Seb ended up joining in on more than half of the songs, and so he kind of became an unofficial band member. And I'm sure at some point we've invited him to officially be part of the band, but I think he sort of preferred to be in when he wants to and out when he doesn't feel like it. So we have been calling ourselves like a duo with 3 members, or Waveform Mountain plus Seb. so
special guest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Session music.
So John, in 2023, Waveform Mountain releases your debut album, Processing. Talk to me about this record and the sound, the sonic landscape of Processing.
Sure, but just a correction, 2024 we released it. Yeah, so we wrote most of the album 2022 into 2023 and then finished the mixing and mastering in 2023 and then started working on the process of figuring out how to launch an album because we'd never done this before. But our I mean, I'm a fan of synthesizers, both vintage and modern, and I'm a fan of progressive rock and synth-based music from the 70s and 80s, and that was probably the background that led me to creating the types of sonic textures I did. But really, it's layered synthesizer parts. Um, and lush sort of arpeggiated sounds, sort of each song it sort of took on its own identity, and then Anders created vocal content that just elevated these songs, and then Seb came along and threw in guitar or bass and background vocals. And to me, I'd say the sonic identity is sort of lush and rich, complex, harmonic, interesting content. To me, that's what it sounds like.
So, Seb, you are a musician. You play guitar. You play bass. You contribute to the songwriting process.
Yes.
On this record, when did you first get turned on to music originally? How did this come about for you?
Oh man, I mean, I've always had music in my life because Dad's obviously musical and our mom is also musical. I mean, I started doing music in elementary school technically because there was a choir in elementary school, which you had to be part of, and I'm actually kind of glad for that because otherwise I probably wouldn't have opted in. But it was actually pretty fun, and I don't know, in middle school I started learning violin. Took private lessons for like 6 years. Never practiced enough. That's a tough instrument. But and then in high school I started playing bass guitar. Just Dad used to play bass guitar as well, so he helped teach me a bit in the summer between middle school and high school, and then I joined the concert band there. And then by grade 10 I decided to join all four of the bands that were in school. So there's senior and junior concert band and jazz band. And then by the end of high school, I had started teaching myself guitar as opposed to bass guitar, and started writing my own music. And I think in 2018 and 2019 is when I wrote a couple of solo albums, and just recorded them in like my room and uploaded them to the internet. And I don't know, I've kind of always been doing music. I'm a huge fan of wide variety of genres, but I'm also like, specifically I love soundtracks to movies and games and stuff like that. That's been a big inspiration for me.
So Anders, you are the lead vocalist. You write lyrics as well. For you and your musical journey, how did this musical journey for you? How did this all start? Was it through your parents' influence?
Yeah. I mean, similar to Seb, we have the same mom and dad, so musicians there. Our grandma on our mom's side was like a very intense choir director who put us in a lot of things when we were young in a honestly a very Partridge Family-esque sort of scenario. Seb and I have two other siblings, so there are four of us, and also we have a cousin. So the five of us all together did a lot of things when we were younger. And then in my 20s, I had I guess a career in musical theater and theater in general, which I just sort of stepped away from only about a year before Dad and I started Waveform Mountain. And I honestly, I sort of thought I'd moved on from performing entirely. Like I felt like I was done with it. I'd done my time in theater, and that was great. And I was sort of ready to do other stuff. I'm working on my master's in sociology, and I just was like, I'm out of that world. And then somehow this has snowballed into a whole new side of things where I'm just doing, music, which is really cool. And it's cool to be doing, our own music. And it's very different from theater in that I'm just, playing myself, I guess, you'd say. And so, um, yeah, it's been a long journey, but a good one, and definitely very, very family oriented. Yeah.
So you just mentioned the perfect word, family. Talk to me, Anders, about the dynamics when it comes to being in a project with family members, your dad and your brother. What's it been like?
Great for the most part. My family and I are really close. Especially the siblings were really close, and then dad is really close to all of us. So, oh my God, I don't know. I mean, mostly we just laugh a lot. I think there's been a lot of really, really good laughter while we've been creating this. I think we've had a good mix of being able to all sort of voice our opinions with minimal bickering. Maybe there are a couple moments where we had differing ideas and we were a little like opinionated with each other, but for the most part we had similar visions, and so it worked out pretty well. And I guess, I mean, the reason why this whole thing started was really just, to me, it was an excuse to spend time with dad, and then an excuse to spend time with dad and Seb, and then sort of turned into, oh, now we actually care about this music, and now we want to put our all into it once we realized that what we were making was something we were really proud of. So I feel like for me, it's been more about family than it has been about the music, but then the music has been like a happy bonus accident almost on the side, which is really great.
So Anders, John, Seb, you're all part of this project, this family project, Waveform Mountain. I mentioned earlier, Anders, you're part of the LGBT community. You are transgender. Talk to me, Anders, about having the support of your family while being family, but also working on music and being part of this project. How important has it been to have the support of your family while you're going through something so personal?
Oh yeah, I mean that's huge. It's huge and it's complex, and I am non-binary. I use they them pronouns. I'm just recently have started changing my name. Anders is my new chosen name, and it has been sort of lined up that coming out has happened like while we've been creating this album. I mean, actually on the album, you can hear in my lyrics, I write about characters with she, her pronouns for almost the entire album until the very last song has a character with they, them pronouns. And it's really just because that was just when I started coming out that I was writing those lyrics. So there's almost there's like the journey is captured in some of the lyrics. I feel incredibly grateful to have family support. Many of my queer and trans peers don't have the type of support that I have, which is really meaningful. I'm also not the only queer person in my family, so luckily there's like a good group of us that have, are on many points in the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And yeah, I'm trying to think if I answered the question now.
Yeah, I think
Did
I think you're telling it just the way you need to. Seb, for yourself, having a family member, a sibling that is part of the LGBT community. Looking back now, were there any telltale signs for you that, like there's something interesting about Anders that I'm not sure if Anders recognizes yet or not, but I kind of see something. Anything like that when you guys were growing up?
That's a really good question. I feel like yeah, how do I answer that? I have 3 siblings, and I'm the only one who is cis. So like I don't all of my siblings arguably had signs that, you know, they were in the LGBTQ community. But I don't know if I could have even noticed that because like they were just the people that I was closest to were all pretty much in this community. So it's like everyone else seemed weird to me. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, like, yeah. And like, even throughout, not as much in middle school because people were still, coming into their sense of self, most of my peers, but like more so in high school. A lot of my friends outside of my family are also queer in some way. Um, I'm bisexual, so like I have some personal connection internally to the LGBTQ community. Our community is actually very much rooted in that, I think. Like our group of friends, me and my siblings are all really good friends, and we always have been. Even when we were younger and used to fight, we were still really good friends. So I don't know if that answers the question. I feel like there probably were signs, but that's just who Anders was. That's just who my siblings were. So yeah.
And John, for yourself, you are your dad.
I'm dad.
So for yourself and watching your kids grow and become who they are, looking back, how has that journey been for you as a dad, as a father, watching your kids grow and become who they are? What's that journey been like, looking back over their progress?
I'm trying to hold in my emotions here. I'm so freaking proud of my offspring. All of them. So freaking proud. They're amazing, 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 amazing individuals. And I think being a parent is something nobody knows how to do. People who have been parents can tell you what it was like being the parent they were with their offspring, but nobody can tell you what it's like to bring human beings into the world and care for them and hope that they can become human beings that they can be proud of themselves. And that, to me, is what I always thought of when my kids were little. I thought one day they're all going to be adults, and I hope that they will look at themselves and be proud of who they are, because as a parent, I think you'll always be proud of your children if you're loving, right? No matter what path they take, there's some part of you that's going to be proud that they're doing whatever. And they've been through a lot of stuff. I mean, going through that type of personal growth that it takes to figure out who you really are is a difficult process for anybody. We all go through our lives learning how to become hopefully the ultimate version of ourselves. And I feel like all my children have done that in very unique ways. And just watching that bonding, the family bonding that's always been there. I get comments from people all the time about how strange it is how close my children are, because even in my family, I have 4 siblings and we get along fine, but we're not super close like my kids are. And it's interesting to watch, and I'm really, really proud of that. I'm just proud of all their accomplishments. I mean, Sebastian is the most accomplished musician amongst all of us. He's released 3 albums. He's also written a novel, right? It's just amazing. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I have to say, John, it's unique for me, having this gay radio show, to have a parent and children be part of it on the same conversation. I think it's a rare period. So I have to say, like, thank you for being so honest and so upfront and so open about, sharing, your journey, because it is challenging, I would think, for a parent, and because they don't want their kids to grow up to be bullied or hurt or anything like that. Like, that's the last thing that a parent wants for their kids. And to have children that are part of the LGBT community and watching them grow and thrive and be artistic and be able to express themselves. Like, well done to you. Well done to you.
Thank you. I think you're right. I think it is rare. I was really happy that we were going to have this opportunity. I mean, partly we're wanting to promote our album. I mean, this is where this came about from. And just on that, a big shout out to ditcommunity.com and Daryl Hers and his team there for building a resource online that if musicians don't know about, a resource for indie musicians to get connected and learn all sorts of things about the music industry and moving forward. And that's how we made this connection. And to me, it was exciting to get to come and talk about our music, but I knew that there's this aspect of it which is we have been on a journey it's been at times difficult, but mostly just loving and supportive. And I think that I felt good that we were going to share that with people in the world, to share that, look, I'm not gay. I've never been gay. I've had gay friends. I've never been around a lot of the gay community, but the kids have a gay or had a gay grandmother. It was never an issue for me. I grew up in the 70s, and in 82 we had our first a friend of mine who came out as gay in high school, and I tell you, that was scary times for being queer, and we were 100% supportive, and we were all ostracized because we were supported. And I couldn't imagine that, I grew up with, I guess my parents taught me the value that people are people, you care for each other. That's it. Like, so if people are mean or rude or whatever, you try and change those behaviors or try and help them not be like that, or you just avoid them then. But you don't hate people, you don't be vindictive, you don't try and change what other people are about. So to me, I recognize that that's not how all people are brought up. I recognize that people are brought up with a lot of trauma and are brought up uneducated and not aware often, and that can cause problems. And to me, just being able to come on and be part of the community that says, hey, care for each other, love each other, right? Like, that's huge.
Well said.
So thank you for having us, because that's wonderful to me.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Seb, I'm interested to know, it was just mentioned you wrote a novel.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, what's your novel about?
Oh man. Okay, so I wasn't expecting to talk. I've done barely any marketing. I'm really bad at marketing. But I will try to summarize.
Here's an opportunity.
It's called Sentinel. I self-published it. It is a sci-fi kind of a space opera. It's about 195,000 words, so it's decently long, but it is a self-contained story, and it's basically about an alien prince who's trying to save the galaxy and deal with the emotional journey that comes along with meeting and interesting people, making friends, and also fighting a lot of over-the-top battles. I took inspiration from Star Wars and Star Trek and Mass Effect, and actually the Metroid game series was a big inspiration, weirdly. And for the action scenes, I was kind of inspired by the Mission Impossible movies. Like, I just was always trying to make them sort of like something I could imagine in a movie that was just, a little more unreal and like a little more crazy than probably is realistic, but like hopefully is fun. I'm pretty proud of it. I think it turned out pretty well.
Pretty entertaining.
Anders, I'm interested to know, because I think I know the answer, but in regards to being a lyricist and being part of the LGBT community, do you think you come to your writing, especially with lyrics, through a queer perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything I create is sort of inherently through a queer perspective. I think that I mean the album is called Processing because it's a synth album. We thought it was kind of fun to have a computer term, but mainly because I wrote the most of the lyrics in a time for me of like quite challenging emotional processing. And some of that had nothing to do with being queer, but a lot of it did. I think coming into I came into my sexual orientation first. It's funny. I struggle with words sometimes. Maybe bisexual. Maybe I just say queer. I have two beautiful partners, and Chris, who uses he, him pronouns, and Sarah, who uses she, her. And once I settled in those relationships, I was able to start thinking about gender and realizing that this was this whole like bastion of stuff that I had to work through and work on. I don't know how you feel about this, Mark, but I have found that coming out and coming into myself is a much slower and complex process than I imagined. I thought queer people just come out one time and then they're out and it's done, but that's not really what it's been like for me. It's a long process of figuring myself out, figuring out how I want other people to refer to me, how I would like other people to see me and recognize me, and how I want to see and recognize myself. And it's not just like you make one social media post and then it's done. It's like a long, long thing. So yes, I think a lot of the lyrics reflect that, even if maybe they're not like explicitly about the coming out process, but a lot of the stuff I was going through had a lot to do with being right in the middle of transitioning, I guess. Yeah.
So bottom line, you're in a throuple.
Well, Sarah and Chris are not together, so we call it a V in the non-monogamous community. So I'm the middle, and then Sarah, and then I'm with Sarah, I'm with Chris. Sarah and Chris are not together, but they're both. I mean, Chris and I have been together for 10 years. Sarah and I have been together for 5 years. We're quite settled, and they're both integrated into the family. And
wonderful people.
yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think some people think for some people being not monogamous is like another part of their identity. For me, it's just sort of happenstance, but it's I've just got really lucky. It worked out really well, and I have a beautiful life with them. Yeah.
So John, Waveform Mountain. Waveform Mountain. This is the name of this project, this group, this band. Yep. Where does that name come from?
Well, we're so funny because part of the way that we came about the name was I went to Anders. We were probably 5 or 6 songs in, and I said, we need a band name. I said, we're going to have a call. And I said, we got 20 minutes to come up with a band name.
20 minutes? Oh my God.
20 minutes. I said, the reason is, like, I've changed my last name in my life. I have 2 children who have changed their first name in their life, one of which is changing their name again. And part of the issue is whenever you label something with a name, such as yourself, there's this question about, is that right? Is that right for me? Is that right? Is it right? And the answer is, it feels weird to make a change like that, to come up with something. So my thought was, as long as it's reasonably good, we don't have to worry about what the name is, because it'll sound right eventually once we have it. So I said, we have 20 minutes. We talked about what were we about? And it's like, well, we're definitely a synth-based band. There's so much synthesizer in our music that there's got to be something reflecting synth. And we're a West Coast band. We come from BC. We all love spending time in nature. We all love being out hiking or at the lake or in the woods or camping or at the ocean. And so we tried to find 2 terms that brought that together. And waveform was really the synth side of things, that a waveform is what is the default building block in a synthesizer. You choose a square wave or a sine wave or some sort of complex wave, and you make a sound. And mountain, we thought a forest at one point in time, but mountain became the one. So we like the idea that a waveform, the shape of a waveform when you record audio, could look like a mountain as well. So,
John, I have to ask you this because I just want to ask this,
Yeah.
but do you remember a 70s, maybe 80s band, Canadian band called Prism?
Okay, so I'm a huge Prism fan, and I am going to see Prism for the first time in my life in 2 weeks here in Duncan. They're coming to our local brewery and doing a show, an outdoor show.
I didn't
And
know
I'm so freaking
that.
excited. I've never seen Prism live. They've been touring for forever. But yes, I'm absolutely aware of Prism. I know all the, well, at least the first 5 albums. I know all their songs on those 5 albums.
Spaceship Superstar.
Spaceship
I
Superstar.
I had on Jim Valance,
Okay, nice. Yeah.
one of the one of the founding members, and
Yep.
and all that sort of stuff, and has gone on to great, amazing things as a
Yeah,
songwriter and
I was
musician.
Yeah, I got to go to Long and McQuaid put on a songwriting workshop in Victoria when I was still living there. So maybe over a decade ago, and Jim Valance came and spoke at that, and I got to go listen to him talk about writing some of those iconic songs. That was great.
Yeah, because looking at your studio, you have a lot of keyboards, a lot of synthesizers back there.
I do. I believe I'm down to 9. So, and yeah, but I have a wall of 80s. I have my Roland D50, my Yamaha DX7, and my Korg DW8000, and then I have more modern gear on the other side, and kind of got it laid out that way. A couple drum machines that you can't see that are just off to the side here. So,
So I'm going to put all three of you on the spot and ask you to pick one word that you think represents your debut album, Processing, and and think of one word that you think what's the word that I want to use that puts this whole thing together, so to speak. And Anders, I'll start with you. What's
Oh no!
what's one word that you would say best describes your debut album, Processing?
I the first oh man, the first I don't know if this is a good word. The first word that just came to mind is just deep, mostly because the sound is a deep sound, and maybe deep or complex. I don't know. That's a hard question.
We're
But
going with deep.
yeah,
Sab,
we're going
let's
with
go.
deep.
Seb, let's go to you.
I
One
had
word to describe your
Yeah.
debut album, Processing.
I think I mean, it's impossible really to pick one word. We're all not that decisive, but I'll say I'll say evolving, because I feel like, I mean, especially in the song Exhale, it's 10 minutes long, and it is sort of more like it's almost like a prog song. Like, it's still a synth song, but it's kind of almost prog rock in the sense that it like evolves through different chapters, so to speak. And I feel like that's sort of reflective of the entire album, is that there's sort of you could almost imagine it, in my mind, it's kind of like a concept album. It doesn't have a clear storyline, but I feel like there's sort of a storyline going throughout all of the music. And yeah, I don't know, evolving. I'm going with that.
Evolving. John, one word.
it's funny. I almost went with deep and complex, but I came up with lush.
Well said. Well said. Lush. There's one one track called The Empress and Her Queen. The Empress and Her Queen. Anders, what's the song about, especially lyrically?
I love that song.
Yeah, well, every single song on the album we wrote based off of a tarot card, and I drew a random tarot card, and this was my draw was for this one was the Empress. And specifically the tarot card, the Empress, is about femininity and about like essentially like all things woman. And it's hilarious because it came up just when I was moving away from womanhood, moving towards my non-binary identity. And so I thought, how can I connect with this? And I think for me, I wanted to write a song about sapphic love, which is something I feel I experience, even though I'm non-binary. I still feel like I'm really connected to like the lesbian community. And so this song is about the experience of growing up only being told hetero fairy tale stories and not really understanding where or how I could fit into those. And sort of then coming up with my own new queer lesbian fairy tale story called The Empress and Her Queen. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. I have to say to John, to Seb, to Anders, Waveform Mountain, well said, well done, well recorded. Thank you all for your time. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.